Shooting ceremonies. Now, a lot of videographers who are just starting out are petrified of the ceremony. And for good reasons too. They worry about not capturing the important moments, not having enough cameras, the photographer getting in the way, the audio not working, or how to capture audio in the first place, and many, many more things. I feel where you're coming from. My very first ceremony was in February of 2018. This was a high-paying client, and they were relying on me to deliver a high-quality video. They knew I had never shot a ceremony before, but they trusted me anyway. And the ceremony went better than I thought it would, and I learned some awesome things from it that I want to teach you, along with many, many more tips and tricks that I've accumulated over the last few years as I've shot countless ceremonies. And I've decided that shooting a ceremony comes down to three main priorities. Number one, right place, right time. Number two, camera angles. And number three, audio, which we'll talk about in a separate video. A frequent question I get asked is, Jake, do I need more than one camera to shoot a ceremony? And the answer is no. A lot of us start off with one good camera and we can't afford to have 2 to 3. So do you need them? No, but can they help? Well, obviously. My very first ceremony I shot, I had 4 cameras going because I was stressed about missing something. Obviously, because I had so many cameras, I was able to capture so much more. But recently, I've had to shoot a couple weddings completely solo and they've turned out beautifully. You just need to know where to be and what to capture. As for equipment, when I'm a one-man, one-camera show, my go-to lens is either a 24 to 70 millimeter or a 50 millimeter prime. The 24 to 70 allows me to zoom out to 24 for pretty wide or landscape shots, and then zoom in tight to 70 to capture the vows without getting in the way. The 50mm prime is sharper, but you have to be more creative with it to mix up your shots and your angles. The ceremony happens so quick, so if you decide you want to use multiple lenses on your one camera, just know you'll need to swap them out very fast and rebalance your stabilizer even faster. I film my weddings on the Glide Cam, so it's tricky to swap out lenses and rebalance, but I also would recommend using the Ronin S and or a monopod. A monopod being the easiest stabilizer to change lenses on. If you have at least 3 cameras, choose one camera to be your on-the-go camera, which will go with you and capture all the up-close moments. Put your other 2 cameras on tripods, preferably with 70-200mm lenses, which you can rent for like $30 a day, and have them on opposite sides of the ceremony, zoomed in to 200mm. This allows you to capture what you need without getting in the way of anyone else. First things first, what do you wear? Again, the goal is to be invisible, right? So you don't want anything that will stand out or pop or distract from the ceremony. I like to wear all black, black pants, black shoes, black shirt. Black portrays secrecy and it also portrays profession. People are less likely to care about someone moving in front of the ceremony if they're wearing all black, because in their mind they're like, it's just a photographer, it's just a video guy. They just see through us. But if you're wearing a bright paisley shirt that's white or blue, you know, and blue jeans, it's distracting. So I wear all black and I recommend you to do the same. So let's break down the ceremony timeline and where I would place my cameras and also myself for each event. The bridal party entrance. This is the part when the family members and bridal party walk down the aisle and take their place at the front. For this shot, the best place to be is front and center. The audience should still be seated, so what I like to do to try and remain invisible is to crouch down in the front row and almost just peep around the corner with my camera. The front row is typically empty anyway until the bride's family sits down. Either way, I try to stay crouched down and out of sight to capture all the party walking down the aisle. As long as you stay discreet, you won't upset any guests by being up front. The bride's entrance. The 2 main shots here are obviously the bride walking beautifully down the aisle, and 2, her groom at the end of the aisle, usually giving a very emotional reaction to watching his bride. This part is a little trickier because you're wanting to capture the bride walking down the aisle, but also the groom's reaction. With one camera, I just stay crouched down in the front row, peeping around the corner on the adjacent side of the groom, so that I can quickly pan from the bride to the groom and get the best of both angles. I wait until I have an excellent shot of the bride filling the frame before swiftly panning over to the groom's reaction. I've done this technique countless times and it works great. The officiant's speech. The officiator will speak for about 20 to 30 minutes, could be more, could be less, before the bride and the groom exchange vows and rings. This is a great time to get B-roll of the couple at the altar, the scene of the ceremony, and the guests watching. As for camera angles, if you only have one, Get a wide variety of the ceremony at this moment. Capture the bride and the groom looking at each other, maybe laughing as the officiant makes jokes. Capture a wide shot of the ceremony happening, the parents on the front row watching with deep emotion, the officiant speaking. Get it all. You'll appreciate the variety in the editing room. With multiple cameras, make sure they're both pointed and framed correctly. One pointing directly at the bride and the other pointing directly at the groom. This frees you up to focus on capturing the guests and the officiant and details at the ceremony. Exchanging of vows. Typically the bride goes first, but it could be different. But the key shot here is getting the bride saying her vows and, if you can, the groom listening, and vice versa. When I have one camera and say a 50mm lens on, I typically crouch down in the front row again, making sure not to block anyone's view, and film the person giving the vows. When it's the other person's turn, I'll discreetly switch to the other side of the aisle. With multiple cameras, as we've mentioned, I'll have each camera zoomed in all the way at 200mm on each person. That allows you to capture the vows and the reaction of the other person. Something I also always do when filming the vows is change my camera settings from 60 frames per second down to 24. That way, it's recording at normal speed because I'm capturing audio. No need to record people speaking in slow motion. The ring exchange. This is a small and simple part that is hard to capture without getting in someone's way. The bride and the groom are placing their rings on each other's fingers, and either the bride or the groom's left hand will be away from the audience, thus being blocked by either of their bodies and making it hard to capture. Remain discreet and capture the best you can without getting in the way. This might even be a good thing to discuss with the bride prior to the wedding day. I've had some brides specifically ask me to get very close to film the rings going on the fingers, even though I would be blocking the audience's view, while other brides ask me to remain invisible and capture the best I can from afar. It just depends on the bride, but with the right lenses in the right position, you should be able to capture it just fine. The first kiss. After the ring exchange, the officiant will say a few words, declare his authority, and then officially marry them as husband and wife. This brings us to the first kiss, a very, very important moment. They'll kiss at the altar and turn to the crowd and then walk back down the aisle into the next event. Don't miss this moment. I've missed it before and you can't get it back. After the ring exchange, the photographer and I typically go right to the middle of the aisle and wait for the officiant's words. To me, that's the best angle there is, front and center. So there's a schedule, lots to take in there. Knowing the timeline is the first step to relieving stress and being in the right place at the right time. Now, obviously, all wedding ceremonies won't follow this verbatim, but you get the idea. And again, you don't need multiple cameras. Don't let that turn you off from trying to film a ceremony. You can do it with just one, but you need to be on your feet and you need to know what you're doing. Communicate with the photographer beforehand so you're both getting what you need without compromising the other person. Don't let bad communication ruin your video. And we'll talk more about this in working with photographers. That's it for shooting a ceremony. Be sure to check out the multiple job shadows in the course that will show you how I apply all these things in real time, and make sure to check out the next video which talks about how to capture ceremony audio. And if you guys have any further questions, please let me know.